So Joe Avalone is a surgeon, entrepreneur, and healthcare executive from Wellesley, Massachusetts. He is a former member of the Wellesley Board of Selectmen and served as Lieutenant Commander in the United States Navy Reserve Medical Corps. Joe received his undergrad degree from Dartmouth College, an MD from Harvard Medical School, and later earned his master's in public administration from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. He spent 5 years as a resident surgeon at Brigham and Women in Boston, and later at Concord Hospital in New Hampshire. Joe was Chief Operating Officer for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Mass and CEO of Veritas Medicine, the startup internet company that qualified and matched patients to potential clinical research programs, studies. Joe is currently the Senior VP at Parexel International, a global biopharmaceutical research company, where he oversees 10,000 employees worldwide, as well as offices in 50 countries. Joe lives in Wellesley with his wife Sandy, and they have 3 children. Joe, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's nice to see you, Aaron, and thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate the role that you play, the important role that you play, not only in keeping the Democratic Party vibrant in Massachusetts, but in making sure we choose the right candidates that ultimately allows us as Democrats to have the privilege to govern. So I really appreciate what you do month in and month out, and it's great that you're here tonight. I am Joe Avalone. I'm running for governor because I love Massachusetts. I love its history. I love its people. And I think, like every one of you in this room, I believe that we should continue to improve the lives of every single person in our state. We are Democrats, and we are a Commonwealth, and that really is our bond with each other. I went into medicine 40 years ago. I hate to say it's that long, but 40 years ago, because I wanted to help people. I became a surgeon, as you just heard, and for years had the very strong, great privilege of practicing surgery. And I learned a lot about people in those days. The struggles of everyday life, families pushed to the brink, emotionally and financially, with the major illness of a loved one, the heartbreaking tragedy of young lives lost to senseless violence in our city streets. And after years, I recognized that I could have a bigger impact if I was a leader and a manager in our healthcare system, and that's really where I've been for the past 30 years. But for the last 7, I've been running a large global operation, as we just heard, managing about 10,000 employees around the world in 50 countries, about 3,000 in Massachusetts. We're the 2nd largest life sciences company in Massachusetts. I know a lot about what it's going to take to bring jobs here to the Commonwealth. I've been running for over a year. I've been in 140 cities and towns, and I can tell you that this difficult recession and agonizingly slow recovery has taken quite a toll on our working men and women and our middle class. I've talked to people who have been looking for jobs for 2 years. I've talked to people who have a job, but it's not near the one that they're trained to do. And I've talked to single moms who have lost their jobs and have multiple part-time jobs just to put food on the table, but now can't dig out of the financial hole that they're in. So we have quite a job to do, and it's creating tens of thousands of jobs throughout our Commonwealth, especially in our older gateway cities. We still have 10% unemployment plus. We're creating a tale of 2 states here that really we cannot abide by. And the next governor has to focus on bringing tens of thousands of jobs to the Commonwealth, and in particular to these older cities. We have a great opportunity. We're entering a new century, and with it comes new industry. So the new jobs, the jobs for the 21st century in our state, are going to be life sciences. They're going to be based on precision and smart manufacturing, alternative energy, telecommunications, and IT. But in order to bring those jobs here, we have to do things differently and boldly. It can't be business as usual, and it definitely can't be politics as usual. We're going to have to create a new partnership between our state education system, our community and state colleges in particular, and these new industries to make sure we line up with the work skills that they require. That's how companies will come here and will expand here. That's been my experience running a large global business. And in fact, in my case, we created our own program with Salem State and hire those employees into our company. We need to do this 10 times over so that our young people have the skills needed to set them up for life and to bring the new jobs here. We also have to improve the poor performing schools, the so-called achievement gap we have, and that's my highest priority. I have a plan for it. And for those at-risk schools and the ones that are failing, we are failing these kids. There are thousands of kids every year that drop out or don't graduate, or even if they do, are graduating at about an 8th grade level and cannot hold down a job in today's economy. We're failing them collectively. We all own that. And it has to be our highest priority to fix that. And it does mean for those schools, we need to fund pre-K and lengthen the school day and remake the school day. And I have a plan for doing that. We also have a variety of very large healthcare issues. We have to keep healthcare affordable. I think it's, as we all do, bedrock that we do have everybody insured, but now we have to keep it affordable. I have kept healthcare affordable. When I was the CO of Blue Cross, I did control healthcare costs. We did have lower premiums throughout the 90s. And we need to do that again. And I am the only candidate that's actually controlled healthcare costs here in Massachusetts. We also have to start treating a major health epidemic that we have as the health problem that it is, namely addiction. And I put forward a Office of Recovery that does just that. Essentially turns on its head what we're doing. Today, we're putting we have about 12,000 people in county jails. 75% of them are dealing with addiction or addiction-related problems that they're in there for. We're failing them. It's costing us a fortune. They're not getting the treatment they need. They go back and stay in their addictive cycle and recycle back into jail. We have to change that completely. We have to create much more capacity than we have. We have to create many more drug courts in order to shift the balance and put people towards monitored treatment. And we have to change the insurance rules to make sure that we allow for, both in mass health and in the private insurers, the comprehensive treatment that we need. I think I'm the governor that can bring the new ideas, the new skills, and match up very well with what we need to do in our Commonwealth going forward. We have to create thousands of jobs. I have created thousands of jobs over my career. We have to control healthcare costs. I have created and controlled healthcare costs. Excuse me, I haven't created them, but I have controlled them. Well, I did create them when I was a surgeon for a while, but I have controlled them in our state. The only candidate that's done that. I am forcefully talking about an Office of Recovery so that we can treat addiction as the health problem that it really is. And it's going to take a governor who can change the stigma around addiction and show people that it is a health problem, a governor like someone with the healthcare background. So I hope you'll consider me. I am working hard to get on the ballot. I don't think I'm on the ballot right now. I think several of us are not. And if any of you are uncommitted, and if you think I've got the right prescription for the Commonwealth, I very much would like to talk to you. Certainly Jack Kelly is here as well, who's supporting me. And we would love to talk to you, and I'd be happy to sit down and have coffee with you. So I think I'm going to end it there and see if you would have any questions.
Not buying coffee, we're in. Any questions?
I've got the jitters now all day long.
I must be drinking a lot of coffee.
Yes,
Todd.
I'm Todd Plants. I live in Precinct 6. What are your plans to prevent climate change and adapt to its effects?
Yeah. I think this is one of those moral issues of our time. I mean, I have children, and we're going to have an irreversible problem on our hands 30, 40 years from now if we don't take bold action now. Very similar, in my mind, to smoking. 20 years ago, we did push hard. We did things that were bold. If you think about it then, 20 years ago, people weren't, the industry wasn't admitting it was really a problem 20 or 30 years ago. Most of us didn't want to change the habits that we had, but we took bold action. We raised the taxes on cigarettes, we had large-scale preventive education programs, and we made a big difference, and smoking has come way down. It's not all the way down to where it needs to be, but we have probably saved hundreds of thousands of lives, even in our state alone, by those actions. It's the same way with climate change today. If we don't do something bold, and it's hard to do now, we're going to end up with irreversible rises in sea levels, volatile weather, and all the other things that we know that we're going to pass on to the next generation, my kids' generation. So I have very much agreed with the very aggressive targets that have already been set out in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiatives and the Global Warming Solutions Act. I very much agree with the subsidies for promoting alternative energy, and especially because that's a twofer in our state. We can create the jobs we need. But none of that is going to happen unless we get large-scale behavior change. So back to smoking. I favor a revenue-neutral carbon tax, and I have been the first candidate to promote it aggressively. We're not going to get large-scale behavior change. We're not going to hit those targets, and we're not going to actually bring alternative renewable energy into commercial use in a broad-scale way until we get massive behavior change. Pricing carbon at its more true cost and offsetting it dollar for dollar to make it revenue neutral is the way to go. British Columbia has done it. They've shown that over 5 years, once again on a dollar for dollar reduction by lowering income taxes, especially for lower income people, and to some degree other taxes, they've been able to keep the economy stable relative to all other provinces and lower emissions by 11% relative to all other provinces. So it can be done. Obviously, our version of it will be a little different because our taxes are different and essentially our economy around energy use is different. But it can be done, and I would push for that. Yes, sir.
You're a high-tech employer, so I'd like to know your view. There's apparently discussion of eliminating an employer's right to put a non-compete in contracts. I know people who have come to Massachusetts, have signed a non-compete because they wanted a job, and then find out that they can't leave and find another job. The result apparently is that people are avoiding coming to Massachusetts, especially from California, where those are illegal. What is your view on eliminating the possibility of companies like EMC and such, who is one of the biggest proponents of these,
Right.
having the right to do that?
Well, I've been lived on both sides of non-compete agreements for 30 years, and so many of us have here in Massachusetts. And obviously, our economy has made its way. I think it's more complex than do you have it or do you not have it. And I think that we probably can improve essentially the laws around non-compete agreements here. I also think that we probably in the end, what really makes sense, if we could find a way to do it, is for higher level employees, senior vice presidents like me and other people, who are extremely valuable to a company who, if they're going to go to another company, it's not just that they're going to take trade seats, they're going to take all this institutional knowledge of that company over there. They probably need to protect themselves. That's why the EMCs of the world are not in favor of it. Whereas lower level employees, I think it's ridiculous that they shouldn't have them in the first place. And I think that it hurts them. It serves no real use. Those folks are not going to be carrying around things that are irreplaceable to the next company. And that is, I think,
That's the type I'm talking about.
Yeah, so for that, I think if we could create a law that exempts those people, that level, then absolutely, because it's ridiculous that they're even subjected to it. For high-level executives, I think it's a more complicated story.
They're big boys. They
Yeah.
take care of themselves.
Exactly.
The other ones.
Yeah.
Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you. Joe.
Yeah.
Mike Friedberg from WGBH News. I was gonna ask Steve Grossman this question because he brought up Charlie Baker. He said what Charlie would come at. Well, what Charlie's gonna come at, having heard his speech at the convention, 3/4 of it was about technology. So I'm gonna ask you, what are we gonna do about the $56 million healthcare connector disaster and the contracting process that ended up with a firm from Montreal getting $56 million to do nothing?
Is this on the record? Just kidding. Thank you for the question. First of all, let me take even a broader step back a bit, and then I'll talk about the connector in your question about the technology. I believe that we adopted a system here 7 years ago in which we have everybody insured. And we have everybody insured with the system that we worked out carefully. And it set the various kinds of rating bands, et cetera, so for small businesses versus individuals, and all the politics were not easy to come up with. To throw that all up in the air and put new rules on top of it because it's the federal program, I think makes no sense, because we already have the outcome that everybody's looking for, that the federal government would like, which is everybody insured. We already have the outcome. So to put it all up in the air again, because to keep it uniform with the federal act, I think is folly. And so I would advocate for a permanent exemption from the new rules, the insurance rules, around the Affordable Care Act. There's really nothing gained for us to do it, and we already have the outcome that everybody, including they, want. I'm not sure why we couldn't get the permanent exemption, and I'll tell you this, I think we probably couldn't get it because they were trying to roll it out nationally. They wanted to keep it uniform so it wouldn't completely fall apart. Well, I could maybe understand that, but ultimately, all of these states are going to customize it to a degree because the health systems are different, the insurance markets are different, et cetera, and we're going to end up being one of several different versions of this. So I don't think we should go through the turmoil. That means we definitely shouldn't go onto the federal health site, because that'll lock us into that. But it's a debacle that in trying to do the integrations between our Health Connector site, which did work, and the federal government's databases in order to determine eligibility under the federal rules, that was a debacle. And it was poorly managed, and there should be a lot of accountability around that. I mean, I'm in big companies, I've run large organizations my whole career, we've had very big IT implementations, but we don't have disasters like that. So it can be done. It can be done right. It should be done right, and it would be done right if I were the governor. But I don't believe, frankly, that we should do it. I think we should push for a permanent exemption. What we need to do in our state now, we have everybody insured, is go to what was always meant to be stage 2, which is to keep it affordable, and that's a bigger issue, and it has to do with how the delivery system operates.
Thank you. I think we're out of time.
Thank you very much.
Sanders is running for lieutenant governor. Cease from Lancaster, Mass. Where he was appointed to the town's finance committee and was elected to the board of selectmen. He earned his bachelor's degree at the University of Maryland. After school, Steve served as an advisor and aide to the late Senator Ted Kennedy. He served in various roles as the Senator's political director, state policy director, and director of scheduling and finance. He later was chief of staff to former Massachusetts Attorney General Tom Riley, serving as the top advisor to the AG with oversight of more than 440 employees and a $30 million budget. He was the CEO for the 2012 Democratic National Convention in Charlotte, and was later served at the behest of President Obama and Vice President Biden as a co-chair for their 2013 inaugural. Since 2001, Steve serves as the president of the Massachusetts Military Heroes Fund, and it's a private nonprofit organization providing support programs and service to families of military service personnel lost in line of duty. He is also a member of the Massachusetts 9/11 Fund Board of Directors, the Board of Visitors for New England Baptist Hospital, and the co-chair of the New Network Frontier JFK Presidential Library. How's that?
I think I can just roll into questions. Jason told you an awful lot about me. I don't know what I said to everybody else to get them to run out of the room. But my name is Steve Kerrigan. I'm running for lieutenant governor. I'm from a little town in central Massachusetts called Lancaster. It's about half the size of this room and maybe the parking lot. It's a wonderful little place. I was raised by two union parents. My father's a retired utility worker, worked for Mass Electric, climbing poles when you had spikes on your feet and not in what he calls fancy bucket trucks they have now. And my mom is still the school secretary at our public elementary school, a proud MTA member. And we were raised, my brother and sister and I, really with an understanding that being a part of a community meant that you had an obligation to your neighbors and to your friends, and that it wasn't just about you and living your life. And they really gave us that example throughout what they did and what they taught us, but also throughout their life. And all of their sacrifices and everything they did give me all the opportunity in the world. I have had a chance, as Jason pointed out, to serve my community, my Commonwealth, and my country, and our Democratic Party, proudly. I've been honored by that. I've been honored by 25 years of hard work, working for my town at a time when we were just coming out of the early 90s recession, trying to restore back some of the draconian cuts we were forced to make when the government, the federal and state government, weren't able to provide our town with enough local aid. I was honored to serve for the Attorney General of Massachusetts, Tom Riley, at the time when we were fighting consumer protection cases, and someone brought up climate change issues. We sued the George W. Bush administration, the EPA, and the United States Supreme Court to force them to enforce their own rules on climate change, and we won that case in the Supreme Court. And then I was honored to work for who I think is probably the greatest senator in the history of the United States Senate, Ted Kennedy, who taught me more about public service and what it means to serve your fellow man and woman in your community than anything else in my life. And I've had a chance to work in the nonprofit world and for the president. But let me tell you why I'm running for lieutenant governor. I'm running because, excuse me, I know the next governor is going to need a partner who has experience at all levels of government and who has experience getting the job done. That's what I've done for 25 years. Every challenge I've been faced with throughout my career, I've been able to tackle because I understand what it means to get folks around the table and work through issues. Senator Kennedy used to always say to us, if you work hard, if you refuse to give in to obstacles, and you stick to your principles, and you believe as I do and he did, and I think many of you do, that a lot of great things can get done if nobody cares who gets the credit, then you can really change the face of your community and your Commonwealth. And that's what I've done my whole life. Those are the beliefs and my value principles, and that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. I'm running because I know folks need a government that is responsible and responsive to the sacrifices that all of you make each and every day by paying your taxes and contributing to your community. Folks want a government that when it says it's going to do something, that it does it, and does it as well as it possibly can. We've got some great examples of hardworking people in state government each and every day showing us the great work that they can do. Our teachers do amazing things with lesser and less resources, and our workers in city halls and town halls all across the Commonwealth really are real champions and heroes. And folks who are working even in distressed agencies like DCF and DTA and others that desperately need more resources and technology and managerial support, they're trying each and every day to work hard, and we've got to have their back and give them the support they need. But we've got to do a lot of things in order to do that. All of us, all good Democrats, will stand up here and say we need early childhood education, and we need better roads and bridges and transportation opportunities for folks. We need to grow jobs all across Massachusetts, but it's the how you're going to do it and having the experience to be able to do it and get the right folks in the room to solve those problems and get the job done that matters the most. And what I want to do first and foremost, and I know we have a tight time and I'd like to take more questions than you hear me. There we go. Yammer on. But a couple quick things I want to do for the next governor and for all of you and with all of you. First, I want to chair a competitiveness council starting the day after the election. I keep thinking someone's knocking on the door. The day after the election, not the day after inauguration, because I think there's too much work to do, to really focus on all aspects of life in Massachusetts and find ways to make Massachusetts more competitive. Yes, we are leading the nation in so many things, but we need to have a Commonwealth-wide discussion about what our future is going to look like and how we're going to prioritize things. A budget document is a priority document, and I want to make sure that our budgets in all 4 years of the administration reflect the values and priorities of both the governor, myself, and of the entire Commonwealth. Second, I want to run a government efficiency and effectiveness project that will really get down to the nuts and bolts of management and how we fund and operate our budget and our government. We want to make sure that the agencies have the support they need, make sure that they're running as efficiently as they possibly can, and make sure that the services that are being delivered as best as possible. And making sure that our funding mechanisms are the right way. You know, most of the government that folks see each and every day are in their city or town, and I think it's a tragedy that because of budget constraints and whatnot, that we're not able to increase local aid on an annual basis, or at least to have it keep pace with spending costs. So I want to focus on that. I also want to serve really as the ombudsman for state government. I want to be your voice in state government. I want to work with cities and towns and with communities all across the Commonwealth. I've been honored to be endorsed by 9 mayors across the Commonwealth and local elected officials and communities from the Berkshires to Provincetown. And I've received that support because they understand I know what they'll be going through each and every day as a former elected official in my town. I want to be your voice to make sure the government is working and as effective as possible. Who better than the second in command of the governor to get uncooperative state agencies to work together to solve people's problems? Because we are, as has been pointed out by many speakers tonight, we are a Commonwealth. I'm somewhat of a civics nerd that you'll probably discover over the course of the campaign. John Adams is my favorite president. And not just because he's from Massachusetts and he's sort of short, chubby, and cranky like me. Yeah, I have much more hair, thank you, Jason. For now, we'll see how the campaign goes, but for now I do. But when he wrote our Constitution back in 1780, he made us a Commonwealth, not a state. And he did so because back in that day, he said it's because there's a Commonwealth means there's a commitment between the collective and the individual back to the collective. I think that's what we need to get back to as a Commonwealth, to make sure that we're all in this together, working hard to make sure that we can move Massachusetts forward. You can trust, if I'm your Lieutenant Governor, that I'm going to get the job done each and every day for you guys, because that's what I've done throughout my 25 years in public life. I want to do that as your next Lieutenant Governor. I need your help. Those of you who are delegates, have heard this pitched about 9 times today probably, but I need your help in June, in 5.5 weeks. But I also need your help in September, and then everyone needs your help on November 4th. But I'm going to go one step further and ask for your help on November 5th. Because we need to take ownership of our government, each and every one of us, every day, and we have a new opportunity in this next administration to really get involved and engaged. You guys are obviously engaged in your party and your community, or you wouldn't be in this room. But I need your help, not just helping me, but helping your neighbors and your friends and your family understand the value and importance of being engaged in elections and in their government and being involved in moving Massachusetts forward. So this is not a campaign that's going to end in 182 days. This is one that's just beginning that, but I need your help. So thank you very much.
I'll open it to the floor for any questions.
Pretty sure I covered it all. Any questions?
I was going to start with the same one I asked the other candidates, Lieutenant Governor, your role in being a liaison with the communities. How are you going to address, particularly addressing Boston for us as residents of Boston, the fiscal uncertainty they face with growing tax revenue, property tax versus commercial versus residential? Where does the state help? They did a lot at GAC in raising taxes, the mayor's tax. What else is left for the states?
I remember my first endorsement, by the way, was Mayor Menino, right when I started my campaign in early January. And I got to know him when I worked for Senator Kennedy, starting 20 years ago when he first came to office. But I really worked with him when we had the convention here in 2004, the Democratic National Convention. I was the chief of staff for the host committee. And he did not hide his displeasure to me or anybody else with the fact that, and I know the state has worked well on this, that the more the city of Boston draws in these massive international and national conventions and events to the city of Boston, and the state gets the hotel and motel taxes, and they don't give them in the right proportion to the city of Boston. This is definitely the engine of our Commonwealth's economy, there's no doubt. And I do think the state, frankly, there's ways in which it's too much intruding in the way the city of Boston is running its finances and its government. And so I would work with Mayor Walsh and with the city council and with representatives and those who are working here for the city of Boston to make sure that representation is more appropriate. You know, we do have to grow our economy outside of Boston. We have to create economies all across Massachusetts to make sure that everything isn't, and this, I know it's probably not popular to say here in Ward 3, but not that everything isn't, you know, every road leads to Boston. We've got folks who are out in
It isn't
the
popular,
Berkshires,
is it?
I know. I'm just, as I lose the vote of everyone in the room.
Think you're not a scientist?
Yeah, no, but I mean, it will help the city of Boston if we start growing economies elsewhere, so we're not constantly jamming everything into the city of Boston. We've got to make it so that our commuter rail isn't just about bringing people into Boston, but that folks across Massachusetts can commute around the Commonwealth. You know, where I'm from, the train that goes by my house is at 10:05 p.m. and it's a freight train. It takes about a half-hour ride to get to the commuter rail. We've got to create more opportunities and more economies so that we can then help a city like Boston move forward.
Anyone else?
Seriously. There we go. Yeah.
Sure. Well, you were talking about working with the legislature and also working with uncooperative municipalities, and so.
I don't think I said uncooperative.
So
Every municipality is incredibly
Sure.
cooperative.
Getting you in trouble. No, but so then in the executive branch, but then in the legislative branch, basically the speaker has a lot of power. And so what do you do when there's a bill and it's stuck in committee that has wide support, but it's still not moving forward because of that jam of power? So, for example, the state divestment bill I mentioned before, supported by all the Democrats running for governor, supported by all the Democrats running for treasurer, but it's stuck in Representative Michaelowicz's district. He hasn't moved it forward.
Not my district, I'm like.
His committee.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Right, it's somewhere in the district, so everyone start looking for it.
So, what do you do in relation to that balance of power?
So, there's a little. I'll try not to go too much of a history lesson, but there was a period of time where there was much more of a balance in state government, and it's because there were more relationships between the legislative bodies and the governor's office and others in government all across Massachusetts. I would start by starting to build those relationships. I mean, that's fundamentally the issue. I mean, I pointed to the sort of the principles I live by. The last one I said was a lot of great things can get done if nobody cares who gets the credit. If we're actually focused on moving Massachusetts forward and not about political gamesmanship, which can be started because of any number of reasons. A certain person not listening to a legislative body, any reason. Saved by the bell. No. Thank you.
And your freight train's coming.
No, I know, right? It's at 10:05. So it's really relationship. You know, it's about but there's no silver bullet. Any candidate who stands here and says, I'm going to be able to get any bill out of the committee unless they're the committee chair, is not being truthful to you. But I do think there's an opportunity to create relationships. The folks don't run for these offices, at least I hope not, because they want to obstruct things. They want to serve their community, but their vision of service may be different than mine, and we have to have that conversation about what their goals are, what mine are, and ultimately it's to serve the Commonwealth, and so we've got to find ways to do that together. But the idea that it's my way or the highway regardless is what gets you to dig in. You know, the speaker's a good man who wants to do good things, but just like anybody, you push him, he's going to dig in. And when the guy who has the most power digs in, then you're on the bad end of that. That's the nice way to say that. I have time for one more quick one? Or no?
Yeah.
I promise the answer will be really quick. I mean, there's nobody out here. There you go.
So you talk about the importance of building relationships in kind of working together and not caring who gets the credit. How will that impact your campaigning if you
I care who gets the credit on election day. How will it impact my campaigning?
Yeah.
My entire record has been, what's that? I don't
really
think
good.
so. I think it will effectively because I think folks will look at the record of accomplishments I've had and talk to folks that I've worked with over 25 years, and they understand that this isn't a vanity exercise for me. I came to this decision to run for office because I was very concerned about the future. I was CEO of the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte. It was June of 2012. I got incredibly frustrated with my own party, with politics in Washington and all across the country. I decided to give it all up and walk away from politics. I thought, when the convention's over with, I'm going to be done. I don't know what I was going to do when I was done, but I was done with it. And a few weeks later, I thought, if I'm this frustrated as the CEO of the Democratic Convention, what must the people in Pittsfield and Framingham and the North End be thinking? You know, how frustrated must they be? And that's when I decided that I believe in my heart that if you have the skills and experience and know-how to make a difference and you don't do it, then shame on you. And I believe you do have an obligation then to serve your community in any way you can. And that's when I started to think about how I could best serve the Commonwealth. And that's when I decided to run for Lieutenant Governor.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
Attorney General, I'm just going to do a brief introduction. And when you hear bells, that means your time is running out. So, Mara Haley is running for Attorney General. She has her family roots in Newburyport and along the North Shore of Massachusetts. Mara attended Harvard College, majoring in government, where she also captained the women's basketball team. She later attended law school at Northeastern University. After school and after a stint at a starting point guard on a professional basketball team, she joined one of Boston's most prominent law firms, and then served as a special assistant attorney, district attorney in Middlesex County. She joined the Attorney General's office in 2007 as chief of the Attorney General's Civil Rights Division, and later was appointed by Monica Coakley to head two other divisions, the Public Protection and Advocacy Bureau and the Business and Labor Bureau. Mara spearheaded the efforts of the Commonwealth to challenge the Federal Defense of Marriage Act and oversaw areas of consumer protection, telecommunications, healthcare, financial services, and Medicaid fraud, among others. She has also led implementation of a first-in-the-nation home court program using funds obtained from the National Mortgage Settlement, which the Attorney General's office successfully fought, with the nation's 5 largest banks to assist borrowers and families in the Commonwealth facing foreclosure. She lives in Charlestown with her partner, and we welcome her tonight to Walk Great.
Thank you. All right, well, it's great to be here, so close to home, just over the bridge. I know, you're all looking at me like she's really short, right? We have the basketball thing. And I have heels on. But that part of that is true.
Is it a video game? No.
What's that? There's still some video around. I don't know if we're going to show it, but it's true. So, look, my name is Maura Healey. I'm a Democrat running for Attorney General. I'm running because I believe it's important that Massachusetts have an Attorney General's office that leads the nation. I know how important that is to people here in this state. That we have an AG's office that stands up for civil rights, that gives a voice to those who are vulnerable, that protects consumers and taxpayers, and thinks about public safety, drug addiction, gun violence in smart and innovative ways. These fights are about my values and about who I am, and I want to take them on for all of you. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I grew up an hour north from here, just over the New Hampshire border, and my mom was a school nurse, just retired. Dad still teaches high school history and coaches sports. He headed his teachers union. I waitressed my way through high school and college, working summers at Hampton Beach at the casino, and was a beneficiary of Title IX and did indeed get to go play basketball and then have this unlikely career. I'm a 5'4" point guard, so you can question my toughness, but I just tell you that I ended up playing pro ball at 5'4". I'm prepared to take on the fights, and I'm not afraid of tall people. So look, you know, the last 7 years for me in the Attorney General's office have been incredibly special, and I've seen firsthand the difference that you can make in the lives of people and the way that you can fight for fairness, justice, and equality. And I want to do that for all of you. You know, we're going to agree on a lot of priorities. What matters, though, is who has the experience to deliver, and I believe that I'm the candidate with the right mix of experience, judgment, and resolve to get this done. I'm the only candidate who's worked in the Attorney General's office, who's ever prosecuted a crime, who's ever been a civil rights attorney, or who's ever stood in courtrooms and argued and won cases on behalf of the people of the state. I'm also the only person who's managed people. I managed over half of the attorneys and staff in that office, 250 of the 500 people. And at the end of the day, that's your state's public law firm. So I know which tools to use, when, and how best to deliver, I believe, on our shared values and shared priorities. DOMA was a big case. It was a case that many told us not to file and tried to talk us out of filing. But I'm proud we took it on, and we won, and we showed leadership in this state and what we can do in making a difference in the lives of people. 40,000 spouses at the time were denied recognition of marriage. You know, we're cut off from access to benefits as a result of that discriminatory law. You know, folks like my friends Daryl and Tom Hopkins, veterans who simply wanted to be buried together in a veteran cemetery, but the federal government said no. So we took on DOMA for folks like Daryl and Tom and families across the state, and we won. We took on the banks, and I was proud to bring the first civil rights case in the country against a predatory lender, because as bad as loans were for so many across the state, they were really bad in certain communities, like communities here in Boston. We have a lot of challenges ahead. I want to be there to take on predatory student lending practices. We've got for-profit schools that are marketing to students, veterans, looking to access their GI Bill funding, promising them degrees and certificates, but offering no training in response. It's predatory, and these students are left with loads of debt, and I've got an aggressive plan to take them on. I also want to take on this opiate and heroin scourge that we see. I put out a plan yesterday, was endorsed by the sheriff and district attorney out in Western Mass for that. That's 3?
You have a couple, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. I put out a plan on this. This is an issue that is hitting and ravaging families and communities across the state, as is the abuse of prescription drugs. So I put out a plan that deals with this. I want to use technology so that both prescribers and those dispensing drugs are talking to one another and know who they're giving drugs to. I want to work to make sure that I'm using settlement funds in our office to provide more treatment for drug addiction and for mental health services, because a lot of times those needs go hand in hand. I want to make sure that we're educating children in school at an earlier age about the dangers of drugs and prescription drugs. So it's a plan that I encourage you all to look at. I also have been talking a lot about gun violence, and I put out a plan a few weeks ago to deal with that issue. And it calls for closing some of the loopholes that exist, getting databases to talk more to one another, because right now at the local, state, and federal level, that simply isn't happening, and doing a better job to provide resources to those who pose a danger to themselves or to other people. We don't do a good enough job of getting access and identifying those who are a danger. And I know that through funding that I can provide in the Attorney General's office, I'll work with communities and with families to get resources to those who need them. I also firmly believe that we need to make sure that every resident in this state has access to affordable quality health care. I'm going to fight for that as Attorney General, using my oversight of insurance companies and hospitals. You know, we can do this, and I'm going to work with our next governor and with our state agencies and with the legislature to make sure that happens. I'm also going to make sure that no woman in this state is denied access to needed reproductive health care. We've got a case the Supreme Court's going to decide in a few weeks about abraphazone, right, around healthcare clinics. And regardless of how that court rules, I as Attorney General will make sure that we find a way to give needed access to that care. I'll also make sure that no employer, based on his or her own personal religious beliefs, denies needed insurance coverage to those seeking medical services. So finally, I'll close with a comment about casinos. Some of you may be aware about my position. This is an issue that I believe the people should vote on. And I also believe that casinos aren't the answer. So my vote, if this gets to the ballot, will be against casinos, because I've done far too many cases against predatory lenders, unfair debt collectors, and the like, and I've worked too hard to fight foreclosures, to help families with personal bankruptcy, to help families dealing with addiction to be any other place. As Attorney General, and as a person who will have oversight over a gaming division, I will make sure, though, that if we have gaming, that the public is protected. Public safety is protected, that the funds that are supposed to go towards addiction from the casino operators actually get there, and that consumers aren't taken advantage of. So these are just some of the things I've got on my plate. But look, I'm a point guard. I know I'm no good without a strong team behind me, so I hope to grow that. I'm here tonight to ask for your support, those of you who are delegates at the June convention, and those of you who are voters, I ask for your support in September. My sister Tara, who lives in Charlestown, is here tonight to take names in a good way and give out information. And I'd
Sounds
be
like you're
delighted
from
to
the
ask.
North End.
I know. I went a little far. Sorry. But in any event, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for what you do for the Democratic Party, and I'd be delighted to take questions.
Jim?
Jim Salini of the North End. Do you therefore disagree with the legal interpretation of your boss, or is it just a personal opinion that you want to see it on the ballot?
I disagree. I would have decided it differently. I left the Attorney General's office in October. This was not a decision that I was involved in, but having looked at the case law, I would have come out a different way. And I know it was a close call in the office, and I just think when it's a jump ball or a close call, you defer on the side of letting the voters vote. So that's where I come to as both a legal matter and as my personal belief.
And as far as the millions of dollars that these companies are spending, they just lose it and they don't get it back?
Well, yeah, the answer to that is going to be one that'll get sorted out if this goes in the ballot and the voters that vote it down. I'll tell you though, the casino operators came into this with their eyes wide open and hedged their bets because the repeal effort was on 10 days after the legislation was filed. Some of them, as the assistant who stood for the state the other day pointed out, some of them have already, they spent their money, but they had their application acted on, so they're not entitled to money back. There are others who may or may not be entitled to some money back. But again, my view is they went into this with their eyes wide open with the possibility that licensing could be taken away. But we'll see. And I want to be clear. Look, I'm the Attorney General. My job is not to make the laws. You got terrific people doing that day in and day out for you. My job is to enforce the law. So I'll respect what the court decides and what the voters decide. But I wanted to be clear about how I came down. And it sharpened a difference in this race because, my opponent opposes us getting to the ballot. He supports casinos in communities that want them. And he has an interest in an online gaming company himself. I don't. So.
Jason had mentioned in his introduction that you're a special assistant to the Middlesex District Attorney's Office. So how do you feel about juveniles who are convicted of murder, whether they should be eligible for parole or not, as we've seen over the last year, the decision has come down, especially in Middlesex County, Ed O'Brien would be, I think that's...
Sorry, turn my back.
Yeah, O'Brien was a case where he was a juvenile, and I believe that was back in 96, 97, so he'd be a guy that'd be eligible for parole. Not to say he's gonna get it, but how do you feel about the decision?
Well, I gotta say, right, whenever we're talking about this, we're talking about horrendous crimes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are like the worst
Take
things that you
O'Brien
read
off
about,
the,
right? Well, no, but that's kind of, what's going on. Now, for some juveniles who were in the car, maybe something bad went down. But I think the court, both here and the Supreme Court, have made clear that juveniles now, as a constitutional matter, have to be eligible for parole. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to get parole, but they need to have eligibility and the chance to have parole. And I think right now, what the debate is how much time. If it's second-degree murder, it's 15 years. If it's going to be first-degree murder, then how much more time has to go by before they're eligible. So, I support that. I follow the law. And I did a lot of work on bullying. That's the other end of this, okay? So I'm not trying to suggest they're the same. I do know something about the juvenile mind, though, and that it's a little bit, less developed, right? I know it's something that there should be a robust discussion about in the legislature.
Something? Tracy?
Oh, so you talked a little bit about the work you want to do to stem the problems with prescription drug abuse.
Yeah.
What would be the role of the Attorney General in finding a balance between keeping the abuse down while also letting people have access to drugs that they do need?
I think it's really important. You know, I was out in Holyoke, touring a community health center yesterday, and I was talking with a pharmacist there, and you're absolutely right. There are people who need drugs. What we want to make sure is that the people who don't need drugs aren't getting them, and we want to stop the sale, you know, of prescription drugs. A lot of the activity is taking place out in the parking lot at CVS. So this pharmacist has a really tight control system in place. It's the kind of technology that I want to make sure is standardized. You know, he's able to monitor real time who is picking up and how soon it is before they come back. And if they don't come back, you know, within 2 weeks, then they take those drugs away. And there's more communication. What we need is more communication between prescribers and those dispensing. I grew up in New Hampshire on the border. I know how easy it is. You know, you go to the CVS in Hampton, you hop over and you go to Salisbury, right? We need those prescribers to be able to see real time who's prescribing and who's dispensing so that people aren't doctor shopping and drug hopping, right? So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And I think doing that is not going to limit or inhibit a person's access to needed drugs.
Anyone else?
Can
Last
you
question.
explain the racial disparity in incarceration rate in Massachusetts? Apparently it's worse than the national average.
You know, this is a really complicated discussion, okay? And, you know, on the campaign trail, you hear a lot of statements, broad brush platitudes about this, okay? I don't deal in that so much. So if I want to answer you honestly, it would take a little bit more time. But I'll tell you what, yes, there are more people of color in our jail than reflect our population here in Massachusetts. I'll tell you that, okay? And I think that, you know, on the issue of criminal justice reform, I think there's a lot of healthy discussion right now about criminal justice reform. I support that. I'm going to work with members of the legislature. I'm going to work with civil rights advocates. I'm going to work with our next governor and with district attorneys to provide needed justice, criminal justice reform. Part of this means more money on the front end to establishing alternatives to incarceration. You know, diversion programs. Your kids who are getting into trouble, they don't necessarily need to go to the jail. You know, they may need some other counseling or programs. Some people need jobs, you know, real jobs. We need to do more, like I say, in terms of mental health services and drug addiction services, because as I talk to sheriffs, more and more, you know, our jails are simply detox centers or warehouses for people with those conditions, and they're not being served, right? And we're not being served as taxpayers by having them there. So I support more resources there. I support more resources for those who are incarcerated, right? Job training, counseling, education, so that they can better reintegrate. And, you know, look, I'm a civil rights lawyer. As chief of the Civil Rights Bureau, I brought fair housing cases, I brought fair lending cases. I will certainly be the first to roll up my sleeves and dig in to examine what it is that really is contributing to the disparities and make the move to offer the best solution.